and welcome to Members on the Mic with the Tri-Chamber of Commerce, where we connect with Tri-Chamber members as they give us a glimpse into their company and share some of the business lessons they've learned along the way. Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Thompson-Cusack, President and CEO of the Tri-Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined by our amazing co-host and Vice President of the Chamber, Sheila Denstead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
First, I'd like to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsor. Stay tuned for our very first commercial break where you can learn how you can rely on Trion. So, Sheila, we've got a great guest ahead of us today, so why don't you give us a little taste of who we're meeting with?
I would love to. I'm very excited to have him here today. Today, we're meeting with Scott Lawrence, owner of Headshots by Scott Lawrence. Scott's a full-time professional portrait photographer based in Rochester, Michigan. His mission is to help people make amazing first impressions, which he does very well, to get their foot in the door and get noticed. Scott specializes in headshots for working professionals, executives, and organizations of all sizes. He also shoots custom stock images of businesses to help them authentically portray themselves in marketing materials. A lifelong photographer, Scott has studied under some of the best photographers and photographer educators in the world. He stays on top of the latest techniques and technologies of his craft to create images his clients are proud to show off, and we can certainly attest to that. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Well, Scott, obviously you have done some of our headshots, and obviously we adore them. I think one of the coolest things about you is that you really do make the shot look like the person. I think people are so heavy into Photoshop sometimes, where I always chuckle when you have those meetings and you're like, oh, I'm going to meet this person. And you look at it like 37 times and you're like, wait, hair colors can change, but this is not even like this. It's very different. But with that being said, it's uncomfortable. People just feel awkward getting their picture taken. I don't think there's anyone really loves it, maybe models, but it's weird. How do you get people to show their authentic self and be comfortable in front of a camera?
So that's really where I think the art, from my standpoint, comes in. It's about getting to that just authentic reaction. And a lot of it is just being personable. It's making a conversation. It's small talk, which I'm otherwise not all that great at, but I seem to be.
We think you're good at that.
I seem to be pretty good for 10 or 15 minutes. And it's pulling on my corporate background, so I can follow along for most businesses for 10 or 15 minutes. I can ask questions. I can ask intelligent questions, and that gets people to calm down. I ask them what they're doing, specifically, and and now having done this for a while, I get a pretty good sense of, the industries just around here. So whether it's the auto industries, some of the healthcare stuff, I have a pretty good handle on those. So I find that just talking about whatever the person does is a good way to just, because they're used to talking about themselves or their business or what they do, and that just calms everybody down.
Well, and I think too, there'd be a difference in personalities for everybody. So you're not going to take a photo of an accountant the same way you would take the director of marketing.
No.
Or would you? I mean, maybe that's a better question. Maybe you do.
Of course, technically it's the same for the most part, but you have to, and I wouldn't say it's so much dependent on the job type or application.
But the person, maybe?
It's really the personality. Because you might have a marketing director that's still pretty introverted and doesn't say much.
Sydney.
Right.
She's an introverted extrovert, but that's okay.
And that happens. It really is, I think, personality dependent. And there's a bit of like personality mirroring where you have to kind of meet people where they're at. You can't go in crazy. Some photographers have a very strong personality. I'm a little more passive. And that tends to work pretty good, I think, in the professional space where people are not models. They're not used to being photographed. It's usually the last thing they want to do.
Ever.
Yeah.
You make it fun, though. I mean, speaking from experience, you came in when you did ours and you made it fun. You lightened the room, you lightened the atmosphere, and you were able to get genuineness out of all of us. I think that's very important, that people how you make people at ease.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and that is really that's the key. I mean, because you can see it in images, and these like corporate headshots, they're not the sexiest art form in the world, but people can tell that somebody is comfortable.
Well, I always enjoy, and obviously when we worked with you, we had a bunch of headshots taken. I liked seeing all the different like types because you get a variety, like the overly smile, the very serious look, and I'd always found kind of the joy in when you see the person seeing their headshots for the first time and seeing which ones they identify.
Yes.
Because there's times where I would see somebody and they don't wear their glasses, but they always wear their glasses, and they're like, I like this one where I don't have my glasses, and I'd be like, but why?
Right.
But it's those pieces of seeing, like, some people like to see them not smile, where I over smile and I'm way too excitable about it. But it's that joy that you bring to somebody when they can see what you've made from their own personality.
Yes. And that's a challenge too, of just pulling that range of expressions and then getting them to use them.
Yeah.
Because like I said, people get fixated on, we all have our own like angles that we like. And I have to remind people that, this pictures, it's a marketing asset. And sometimes we need marketing assets for different purposes. And so you have to think about kind of where the images are going to used, where they'll be used, as opposed to just, I like that one.
Yeah.
Because I see too, it's interesting when most people come in for a session with me at my studio, and that, they may need 2 or 3 images, and that's fine. But when they add that second one, I always have to remind them, pick something different, whether it's a different background, different pose, different outfit. And you'd be surprised how hard it is to get people to, like, they'll see one they like and then they pick the next one. And it's so frustrating. Like, something different, please.
We'll tell you about something different. There's a lot of buzz around about YouTube. What are your thoughts on some of our small business owners starting YouTube channels, and how can that help them market themselves in this time and age?
So I've been running I've had a YouTube channel for years. And really, I would say, I think it was right before COVID. I want to say it was maybe end of 2019 that I had a kind of a week break, and I had a chance to kind of get things back up and running. And it's just been one of the greatest like marketing initiatives that I've done for the business. It's given me a voice of, it both gives me some video presence, some video skills, which are important. But it's also given me an opportunity to provide like essentially client training, like on demand. And so I provide a lot of videos on, what to wear, how to pose, what to do with your hands in a picture. A lot of like basic client preparation tips. It's just basically how to be a model when you're not a model.
Well, it's good timing too, because if people are seeing that before they come to the studio, you're not spending that grunt of time. They may have actually had time to practice.
Right. And it's always funny when they're in the studio getting ready, or if I have a makeup artist there that particular day. My makeup artists are always so impressed that everybody watches the videos, because I send them out in in kind of the pre-appointment kind of email confirmation type things, and everybody does their homework. It's really interesting.
How have you used them though to attract people? Because I've seen them quite a bit on LinkedIn and things like that. How's that work?
So it's interesting that a lot of it is just the fact of me being there. So somebody goes to my website and is searching for a photographer, just by seeing me, for better or worse, that helps you make a purchasing decision. You either know, hey, this guy looks pretty good. He seems relaxed, like his personality, or I don't. And if you don't, that's fine. That saves us all the trouble. And I've also had, I've gotten larger corporate jobs too, where they've seen that presence, and, that extra step kind of closes the deal for me on several things that I wouldn't have thought it would have made a difference.
Well, it's kind of almost a video interview. You're giving kind of advice, but it's an interview in itself.
It really is an interview. And you hear too, or people, people that do a lot of podcasting or other YouTubers, they'll talk about how people get to know you, and you don't really, you don't know them, and then they start talking to you like they know you. I was actually in one of the few camera stores in Detroit, I don't know, a couple of months ago. and somebody recognized my voice just from one of my
Oh,
videos. So it was a little weird. Yeah.
You're like, it was cool and creepy.
Yeah. But I was surprised though when I started, I really didn't see there wasn't a lot of content for the subjects. There's tons of YouTube stuff on how-to photography, a lot of equipment stuff. I mean, that's but there wasn't. I was just really surprised, and so I kind of ran with that niche, and that's worked pretty well.
Well, I love it. Well, this sounds like a really good time to take a quick commercial break and hear a word from our presenting sponsor, Trion Solutions. Stay tuned, everyone.
My name is Jenny Brown. I am the CEO of Dutton Farm. We are a nonprofit in the behavioral health system. One of the things that we are so grateful for in our partnership with Trion is the absolutely incredible customer service that anytime we have a question or a concern, we can call up the customer service department and we'll get an immediate and effective answer.
And that's why we rely on Trion.
You can always rely on Trion.
Welcome back to Members on the Mic with the Troy Chamber of Commerce. We are here with Scott Lawrence with Headshots by Scott Lawrence. So how important is it in creating and marketing a niche or a specialty?
Well, I think it's probably one of the most important things you can do as a small business.
Okay.
It's really defined what I do. As a photographer, there's a million different directions you can go. And when you're starting out as a photographer, you want to basically shoot anything that comes along. And everybody goes through that phase. And then there's, then some of us kind of figure out, what we like to do. And then it's just a question of, and it's a difficult decision at that point to really dial in all your marketing, your website material and all that sort of thing, to say, hey, this is what I want to do. And, this is what you should hire me for. And that comes in the, form of, what you show on your website, what you don't show on your website. Even when so I've only been in Michigan for 6-7 years. And when I came from, we were living outside of Chicago at the time. And that's where I really established kind of my headshot business. And just coming from Detroit to Michigan, or no,
Chicago area.
Yeah, getting the geographies. Yeah, coming from Chicago, there's a lot more. There was a lot more familiarity with kind of the headshot idea and the fact that you hire a headshot photographer, especially from the commercial side, the acting market and that sort of thing. So when I got here, people were a little confused. They're like, "Oh, but you shoot weddings too, right?" And I'm like, "No, no, not at all." And so in the last few years, I mean, headshot photography has grown quite a bit, but that mindset of specialization, I think, is even more important. So now people know me. I mean, they know me in the chamber. They know me around town as the headshot guy, and that's perfect. It just fine tunes my client base. It helps me determine where I want to spend my time.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult decision to make because it feels so nerve-wracking to kind of say, this is what I'm going to do. And then, you're passing up, all these other potentially, lucrative jobs. But it really helps. And you see it, I mean, it's not like, you see specialization in everything. You see it, like I tell people all the time. I think I even have some videos on this. There's a million types of or attorney specializations, right? You wouldn't hire a
divorce attorney for like litigation or things like that.
Right, or vice versa. Yeah, right. You never know, yeah. But and you get the same thing in medicine too. A doctor is a doctor and they can do X, Y, Z, but you probably don't want make the analogy.
I mean, you can be good at everything, but you want to be great at something.
Right. That's really what it comes down to.
Well, Ashley, I do have a question for you, but I have another question based on what we were just talking about. What led you to Headshots? What were you looking at before you specialized?
So I experimented a little bit with family stuff, kids, and I think that's pretty common as parents with younger kids. It's something to do, keeps your focus. And then having a corporate background, I kind of stumbled on a couple of workshops that were newer at the time. And that really, I would say, kind of opened the doors to, hey, this is a possibility. And then I quickly realized that bringing in my corporate background where I was comfortable talking with corporate professionals, which doesn't sound like it's all that big of a deal. But I had a couple photographers tell me, one in particular, I still remember, she was like, I didn't go to college. I'm a little intimidated by talking to people in suits, whether it be, lawyers or whoever. And so that was pretty eye-opening that, hey, this is it's kind of a niche that I can dial into and be very comfortable doing. So
That's
here I
very
am.
cool.
Yeah.
We're glad you did it.
Yeah.
So, we're hearing a lot about AI.
Mm-hmm.
How's it affecting your industry? How do you view it? What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence?
Well,
dun, dun, dun.
yes, I have thoughts. So I was,
That's why I have the question.
We all
yeah,
do.
yeah.
We all do.
I was actually just recording a new YouTube video yesterday, in fact, on AI, and basically where it stands is there's a lot of software that uses quote AI, and then kind of how it's comes to fruition depends on the software. The thing I think in photography that a lot of people are talking about is more of the generative stuff. That Photoshop is technically it's still a beta feature, but everybody's trying it out now, so it's for all intents and purposes here. But it's the kind of thing where you should be able to select something in the picture and have Photoshop replace it with something else. Or the other example is that you take like a tight landscape picture and then you expand the crop and then you have it fill in kind of that scene. And I found just casually that the landscape stuff works pretty good, but the people stuff not so much. The people details where it kind of makes stuff up is just it's way off. So there's that generative piece, and then there's a lot of the kind of computational stuff, and that's where I'm using it now today in terms of cutting people out of backgrounds. So there's some automated retouching things that you can do. So those are the kind of things that I think are going to be a little bit more practical and controllable. But the challenge with the generative stuff. So this was the exact YouTube topic. So I had a guy come in, he's a lawyer, needed a new headshot. His previous one was 20 years, 15 years old to his own admission, right? And this was, a couple months ago in the heat of summer. He comes in, suit jacket, tie, and shorts and flip-flops, right? And he's like, oh, I thought it was just a headshot. And we hear that all the time. People think, oh, it's just a headshot. But going back to that marketing idea is that, law firms and larger organizations like to have different formats of pictures because you never know where you might need to use it. So after we laughed about it for a couple minutes, and we're like, okay, well, we still got to figure this out. And he doesn't want to come back for a reshoot. I don't want to take the time for a reshoot. It's like, all right, let's take a shot as you are with shorts.
Oh gosh.
And see what happens. So he's like, oh, fine, whatever. He doesn't really care. And so I've been playing with it. And basically, this is a standing objective portrait, well lit. It's, in terms of a technical image, it's pretty straightforward. And so the idea that Photoshop is kind of marketing, or any of these image generators, is you basically just select what you want and tell it to do something else and magically appears, right? So I selected his pants.
Give me pants.
Yeah, matching suit pants. And it was a disaster, just a disaster. So you could kind of tell how it's trying to force other images in its database onto this picture. It was just a mess. It was doing weird things with his hands. It was like sort of giving him some sort of accessory, like a bag or something in his one hand. It put him in like almost yoga pants.
Oh.
Sassy.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the point. I was like, if it doesn't even understand men's fashion
Suits.
trends, which not that complicated. So it was really weird. Kind of a disaster. So I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon from that perspective. So we'll see. But I think, on a practical standpoint, that's what I wanted to do. If it can't do that, it's not gonna work.
If it can't give you pants, you're out.
Right. What else are you supposed to do? Yeah. And then then we hear about too. There's headshot generators on the internet too, which I've I haven't played with them in detail, but I've talked to some photographers that have. And those are interesting in that, yeah, they may or may not work, but one of the things that I, really pride myself on is this kind of efficiency and standardization. You have an organization, whether it's, a handful of people in a small business or, hundreds of people in a law firm or a large corporation, they need a specific look.
Yeah.
And, these generators, you'd have to, one, gather up, 20, 30 images of somebody, send them in, see what they get. Then you have to send them back out and hope everybody picks something similar. And, that's unlikely just on the face of it. So you really run into quickly kind of the logistical challenges of, maybe technically it might work for one person, but
Yeah.
in scale, I don't think it's there yet.
Well, that's actually a really good lead in. As you're talking about numerous people for a business, you're taking it for an entire company.
Yes.
How do you get a good team picture? Like that is, I mean, this,
Well, you can cut people out.
I say
Yes.
delete them, put pants on them.
Yes.
But what are some of the steps to have a really good team picture?
So my preference these days for team picture is to actually photograph everybody individually.
Oh.
As opposed to kind of lining everybody up. I'm finding that for the most part, if you have a group of 10 or 15 people, in kind of an office setting, most of them don't want to give you more than 5 minutes for a group picture. And most of the time, their expectation isn't all that much different than just kind of waving a phone around. And so I found that really just wasn't worth the hassle. And so basically the way I approach it now is that, and also going back to logistics is, post-pandemic, you can't get anybody in the same room today. And people are still surprised, that they can't round up a half a dozen people for a group shot. So I have to look surprised each time I run into that. I'm like, oh, you can't get them all. Yeah, that's too bad. But really now, so this kind of group model is the idea that you photograph everybody individually and then you make a composite in Photoshop, which is very doable. And that technique allows for so much flexibility. So for example, I was working with a new veterinary practice in town, and it's a growing practice, and I photographed probably a dozen people in their office, and then they just emailed me they're hiring half a dozen more. And so just this ability to basically, they're basically headshots on demand. So, they can just go to my studio and we do a new picture, and then we can easily insert them into the group photo later. And this also is good as, because group photos don't last very long.
That's a good point.
Groups change pretty quickly. So recently I had somebody in a group shot that passed away, right? So you have to make that adjustment. But it's like you never know what can happen. And then this kind of setup also allows me to, and I tell everybody it allows you to be posed and lit best for you.
Yeah.
And that makes everybody feel better too when you tell them that that's really the main benefit.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
functionally, it's pretty useful. Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I've learned so much just sitting here today, and I've learned that I can finally get my Louboutin, so we'll be talking very soon.
Yeah, it's just-
Yeah.
They'll just look wonky.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
okay.
That's okay.
Well, yeah.
Well, we truly appreciate you being here today.
No problem.
Any last nugget of information you want to share with everyone listening?
The biggest thing I would say is that, if you're trying to get over your camera fears, especially even as a business owner, trying to kind of put yourself out there from a marketing standpoint is just put yourself out there. You got to start.
Yeah.
We kind of have to all get over our own fears and camera anxieties. And the best way to do that is just kind of jump in. And people want to see you, and that's all they're thinking about. They're not going to look back and judge you for the things that you're worrying about. We're always our own worst critics.
Absolutely.
And that's a big, that's a big,
We're like, yeah.
It's a big hurdle you have to get over. But once you can get over that, kind of it really frees you up from a marketing perspective to talk about your business or, whatever it is you're doing. So.
Well,
So-
thank you so much for joining us
thanks for having
today. Where can someone find you? Like, do you have a website?
I do have a website. Yeah. No AI required, actually.
Yeah.
So you can go to scottlawrencephoto.com, and then I've got a couple of different session options there. I've got a lot of corporate options as well. For individual sessions, I do online bookings, so there you can see a calendar right there and book something right online. And then don't forget to visit the YouTube channel too.
Obviously,
You
yeah.
can see that. That's all linked through my website as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining
Thanks
us
for
here
having me.
today. And that's all we have here on Members on the Mic with the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Special thanks to our guest, Scott Lawrence, with Headshots by Scott Lawrence, and to our presenting sponsor, Trion Solutions. For more information on joining the Chamber and for upcoming events, go to troychamber.com. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.